Where will you be in 5 years? Where will we be in 5 years? In 25? In 50? Let's be here and here, with her and him and they. Let's connect them. Let's connect everyone. Let's deliver technology that gives them access to power opportunity. Let's set a new standard for data security and personal privacy. Let's change the system. Promote equality and fairness in the workplace. Let's tear down the barriers to social justice for a more inclusive world. Let's clean house, zero carbon, zero waste. Because the health of our family is tied to the future of our home. Let's gather resources and partners, steer toward our greatest challenges and accelerate. For the benefit, for all. Where will we be in 50 years? Let's go see. Cisco, the bridge to possible.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Find Yourself in the Future. Today we're talking about the critical field of cybersecurity and how we can protect ourselves and our digital world against ever-evolving threats. Cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue. It's a global risk impacting economic stability, critical infrastructure, and societal trust. As our world becomes more interconnected and digitally dependent, safeguarding data, ensuring privacy, and keeping systems running smoothly is essential for everyone, everywhere. Joining us today is Zack Kielich, a Senior Director of Product Management from Cisco Security Group. He'll share insights on a crucial security concept, staying left of boom. Let's dive in and learn how to think about security proactively and build a resilient future. Welcome, Zack, and thanks for being with us today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zack Kielich, and I'm Senior Director of Cloud Protection Suite at Cisco Security's Business Group. And what we'll be talking about today is staying left of boom. As a high level, we're going to be hitting on 3 different sections today. I'll be talking a little bit about security frameworks and how we typically think about different security types of breaches, so you can really formulate your own mental framework for different types of attacks. Then we'll be talking about some security tools that we use and how those align to those types of attacks. And then last, I'll share a little bit about my career journey, about how I ended up, 1, being in security, and 2, being in product management, which is a really fun role to be in. So let's start off with, what is boom? Well, honestly, boom is probably one of the worst days of a security professional's career. Boom implies that there is an incident, that someone is in the environment, there's been a breach, data is actively being encrypted or leaving the environment. It is a bad day for a security professional. And we want to, if at all possible, try to get in front of these events as much as possible, right? We want to be proactive in our security posture rather than reactive whenever we can. And so when we look at an attack's timeline, there is what we typically talk about as left of boom, which is before the incident, and then right of boom. And as I mentioned, we want to do everything we can typically to remain left of boom so that we are not having to go and do a whole bunch of cleanup. You hear about this all the time in the news, right? Between hospitals, retailers, everything like that, where they're having these types of events where someone's gotten in, access customer data, encrypted data, and then it requires a whole lot more cleanup than otherwise needed. And the types of attacks out there are numerous, right? All these types of attacks, between application attacks all the way to denial of service attacks, have some sort of negative implication on a business. Sometimes it could be as far as, data being removed and customer information being shared and taken. But it could also mean that an application is simply brought down, meaning that a customer, when they're on their mobile app trying to get their pizza delivered, or that new Nintendo Switch 2 ordered from one of the retailers, that they can't because that website has been brought down. All of these things are various degrees of an attack in order to immobilize some sort of enterprise or company. As we start on the application attacks, like this is really focused on open source libraries and known vulnerabilities. There's actually some really great work done around here and in the infrastructure space that we'll talk about in just one second around known vulnerabilities. They're called CVEs for short, where the community actually shares information when they detect these vulnerabilities so that companies can go and protect against them, try to make sure that nobody's actually exploiting them. Then, of course, there's authentication attacks. The most common authentication attacks are actually when they're trying to take credentials from people and through phishing attacks and everything like that. Infrastructure exploits focusing on open ports and misconfigured cloud resources. This is really where vendors like in the CNAPP space, vendors like Wiz, Orca, Aqua, they're actually looking at all the configurations in the cloud and determining toxic traits. And then, of course, network attacks, right? Spoofing and lateral movement. Lateral movement is actually a really interesting one where when an attacker gets into an environment, they start moving around the environment to get extra additional pieces of information, increasing their likelihood of being able to find really valuable information. And we'll be focusing, I'll show you a demo in just a little bit here of that lateral movement or of how we protect against lateral movements and make sure we're not exfiltrating information out of the network. And, you know, everything right now is focused around AI. And the challenge here in security is that AI is both is working in both directions, right? AI is both being used by attackers or people trying to gain access to our systems, as well as AI is being used on the defending side as well. Now, it used to be that when we talk about known vulnerabilities and stuff like that, that it used to take weeks, months for these attackers to build exploit kits where you could basically just have a script and hit the go button and it would try to look for these vulnerabilities on the open web. Now that's down to hours or days because the AI coding capabilities have increased their velocity, which has meant that security professionals such as ourselves at Cisco, we have to use AI to start defending against these in a much faster way as well, making sure that we're our windows and doors are locked, so to speak, in our house. And when we think about how we can start to protect against these types of things, there's these vectors of protection. Shift left refers to before a application is deployed, before infrastructure in an application is deployed. This is when the application owners are coding, they are doing their infrastructure as code, IAC, and they're going through what's called the CI/CD pipeline, where code goes through testing, delinting, smoke testing, all this different stuff. As much as possible, we want to make sure that security is built into that shift left movement, built into the actual code itself. There's always going to be new vulnerabilities and there are always going to be mistakes, right? And that's where the shield right part of the lifecycle comes in. After an application or infrastructure is deployed, making sure that we're looking at how that is set up. What's going on with that application and that infrastructure while it's running? Is it doing something outside behavior? And then, of course, you've got the whole application stack that we're applying this to. You have to make sure you're looking at cloud resources, the workloads themselves, so like an EC2 instance or a VM or a container. You have to look at the APIs and also the data layer as well. So it's really a big breadth of things that security professionals are looking at. And typically, there are a lot of specialized security professionals in each one of these spaces. Now, when we shield right, of course, what I was talking about before is we are trying to, both in shift left and in shield right, we're trying to remain left of boom in all things related to the application and infrastructure. We're trying to make sure that nothing is getting by and we're actually keeping the enterprise secure. And where Cisco tends to focus our efforts, at least in our products today, is that we tend to be in the shield right, left of boom space, right, in that overlap. Now we have a lot of really great products for forensics and things like that after an incident happens. So that's the right of boom area. Those are things like Splunk or XDR, things of that nature. But where my part of the business focuses on is that shield right, left of boom. And, as I was mentioning, it's product teams that make these tools possible. And if you take away anything from this presentation, like the security elements are fun and they're really interesting, and they're, being in cybersecurity is really cutting edge and a really important field. But really, it's all about these teams going and trying to solve problems, right? All these different attacks have different signatures, so to speak. They use different methodologies and everything like that. And whenever there's a new type of technology, new type of attack, it's up to product teams to go and identify that problem, determine how to creatively, oftentimes, how to address that problem and get in front of it. So that way, obviously, our enterprises and the customers we serve remain protected along the way, and we can keep them left of boom. Some of those products specifically that we work on within Cisco are secure workload, which I'll show you in just a second, has really great dependency mapping capabilities. Obviously, Cisco is a very large firewall vendor, which does enforcement of policies, allows traffic to go through or not be rejected based on certain signatures, ports being requested, all this different stuff. And then obviously on the Splunk side, Splunk, its whole purpose is to ingest as much data as possible from different sources, your infrastructure, your application, your posture, all these different things, and then do correlations to actually detect whether or not there's somebody in your environment moving around. Really important because, of course, we want to stay left of boom, but we also don't want to miss when an incident occurs. That would be just as bad as, or even worse than having the incident. Because if we don't know that there's someone in there, we can't take remediating or compensating measures in order to fix it. So what I'll do next is I will actually take you through some of those products and walk you through how that experience is, how a real security professional looks at their environment, interacts with their environment, gathers and organizes data in order to make sure that we are staying in that left of boom situation for already deployed applications. So here's an example of one of our tools. Secure Workload is a product by Cisco. And what it does is it actually takes in a whole bunch of data from your network. To get a little bit technical here, is they're called flow logs, where it actually shows all the connection information between different workloads as they are going through and doing their connections and making their work. And this is really important data because naturally we would expect to see certain connections between different workloads. And when there's anomalies where there is a connection between workloads that we wouldn't necessarily expect, that are not within our baseline, that could be deemed as like an issue. Maybe it's someone trying to move around on the inside of the network, and we want to make sure we flag that stuff as anomalous. And so we start off with Secure Workload, and it gives a security practitioner a really great view into all the different postures. It gives you vulnerability scores and attack surface scores and all this different stuff, which is really, really valuable to our security practitioners as they try to determine where they should prioritize their efforts. And what we're going to be looking at today, I'm just showing you here a little bit more of the screen as I get control of my mouse here. You'll see that the goal here is to give any security professional a really heads-up view as to where they should put their time and energy in, because especially in these really large organizations and enterprises, there are hundreds of thousands of workloads. There are tens of thousands of developers creating new types of applications. It is really, really difficult without these aggregation tools to be able to see exactly what's important and where they should be putting their effort. So let's take a look at the very first thing, which is this global visualization within secure workload. Now, it starts off really high level, but it gets very granular very quickly. What I'm going to want to do here is, again, I'm looking at this representation that was based on the flow logs. And what I want to do here is I want to start looking at our internal environment. And once I go into our internal environment, you can see I have, access. I see there's a data center. I see there's a campus. I see there's an email service, all this different stuff. And specifically, today we're going to be looking at a finance app. And the finance app is actually a hybrid app. Hybrid meaning that it spans some of its components, some of its workloads are in the cloud, and some of them are on premises. This is really, really common for a lot of large enterprises because they haven't necessarily been born in the cloud necessarily. So what they tend to do is they start off with application, like pieces of an application, and they start moving it to the cloud where appropriate, where there's cost savings and or services in the cloud that they can leverage to move and develop faster. But this is very common for an enterprise to have an application that's spread across environments. And it's also challenging because you need a tool, you need tools at that point that can see across both environments the same. And so you see here, I went into the data center, and here's some of the different environments within the data center. There's a dev environment, there's a security environment. I'm interested in production here. And when I go into production, I'm drilling down even further, right? I see that finance app there. Okay, that's where I want to tap on. And I see that the finance app, when it's in the on-premises environment inside the data center, it's also connected to the internet. It's also connected to the finance app within GCP. GCP standing for Google Cloud Platform, which is one of the big four, depending on who you ask, cloud providers out there. And so I'm interested in looking at this a little bit more, and I want to see, what exactly, how these things are communicating with each other. I see that there's no anomalies, right? It looks like everything that's connecting to is appropriate. And what I'm also able to see over on the right-hand side is I mentioned this before, CVEs, those known vulnerabilities inside the environment. In this case, the CVE count is 0, which is really great. It's also really rare, right? It's really rare because there are always typically in a vulnerability within an environment, unless it's on the operating system, for example, is on the most recent build with like the most recent libraries for the application, all this different stuff. It has to be fully patched, fully upgraded. Even then, it's probably only a 0 count of CVEs for a very short period of time. It's not always about getting 0 CVEs. Instead, it's about making sure that you patch the most important ones, or the riskiest ones that are on the most valuable applications, and making sure that you put sometimes compensating controls. Compensating control mean like a firewall that blocks access to that vulnerability or something like that in the process. So I'm just calling out here that the CVE count is there, which is really a nice thing to have top of view. And you can see here how it's out to the internet. So with all this, I'm going to change views. Now that we've seen how we can like start high level from all those logs, how it becomes very actionable from the standpoint that you can drill down into these environments. Now I'm going to take that information and I'm going to change and make it actionable. Now I know where we're working on. I want to make sure that this finance app is completely micro-segmented. Right now, you'll remember at the beginning when we talked about different types of attacks, we talked about lateral movement. Lateral movement, once again, is the ability for an attacker, once they get access into something like this, for them to be able to move within the data center, right? Not just within the app, but then move into the security app that you saw earlier, move into maybe the other applications within the production environment. We want to stop that as much as possible. And so micro-segmentation is the way that we do that. Micro-segmentation basically creates enforcement policies that says only certain applications can talk to certain applications, and everything else, every other application that's not on that list gets rejected, right? Is not able to connect. And again, what this does is it makes it so that if someone gets into the environment, that sure, they might be able to access like a few of these different services that would be within normal behavior, but they will not be able to go any further, right? We want to, if someone's in the environment, we want to trap them confine them to a certain area. We want to lock the windows, lock the doors, right? Make it so that they're not going to be moving around. And so I'm switching, right? I'm still in that finance app, as you can see on the left-hand side, but I've switched the view to now make it actionable. And I'm going in and I want to figure out all the different things that were analyzed, right? All the different rules. And you can see start down below, the scopes start coming into play. And those scopes are really around like those different policies. Where I really want to get to is this screen. This screen lists all of the policies that we believe should be there, but are not, right? This lists out all of the different policies that would be required if we wanted to implement micro-segmentation. And what this does is obviously it says, okay, well, the front end should be able to access the database. The application or processing layer should be able to access the database. And it gives that permutation of all the different components, all the different workloads should be able to have access to each other, but nothing else. So you can see here that the action is allow, everything else is deny by default. And this is another term that's been gaining a lot of notoriety in the security space for the past couple of years. I might get it wrong, but it's like 5-10 years or something like that, is zero trust, right? Making it so that the only the things that are explicitly allowed are able to access each other. Everything else is automatic deny, right? We don't trust anything unless it's specifically allowed. From here, so these are just different groups of each other. So this is different views of each other, I should say. This is those rules grouped. You can see that in the protocols and ports, the very first line, we have 4 more. And then on the 4th line, there's 1 more. So these things are all grouped together based on how we want the different services for the application to react and be able to communicate with each other. Now, if I want to ungroup that, I can actually see in detail, right, the specific policies that would be created to enforce this. And now this is interesting because secure workload has the ability to do things as an agent, right? Which is really cool. You put an agent on the device and it's going to, on the host level, like look at all the things coming in and trying to talk to it, and will reject things if appropriate. But even cooler, I think, is that we can do this in a agentless way. Many times security professionals find that agents can be difficult, right? Because you have to constantly update them. You have to install them on each of the different devices, all this different stuff. And so there is maintenance that goes along with it. The agentless methodology, though, that we're about to do, makes it so that all these rules go to an actual firewall that's in that production environment alongside that finance app, and makes it so that you don't actually have to maintain those agents, at least in this instance. So we then go and push that out to the firewall. You can see here that all those connections are now visualized in a way where, you know, all these things are able to communicate with each other, but nothing else across the different ports. And then you're actually able to see in real time, once those are deployed to the firewall, they're deployed now to the firewall in this demo, is that how often they are allowing traffic to come through and how often they're being rejected and then escaped. You can see a little uptick, right, on the right-hand side there, after we applied these policies, that there's an uptick in rejected and uptick in escaped. Escaped meaning that it doesn't hit a specific policy, like it's not like it hit a reject policy. Instead, it simply is the default. It didn't hit a permitted or a rejected policy, and so therefore it's automatically rejected, and we call that escaped. So you can see here that there's an uptick, meaning that it's working, right? There were some things that were probably connecting to the finance application that maybe weren't intended, weren't designed for something like that. And now those connections are now being rejected, which is exactly what we wanted to have happen. The downside of this, right, just as a quick reminder, is that there could have been some things unintended that were connecting to that in a legitimate way. It could potentially break something, right? And to a certain degree, that can be okay, right? When those things happen, so long as it's not a massive production type thing, you always want to do your research and homework up front. But it gives you the ability to then discuss and determine internally from an architecture perspective and a security perspective whether or not that thing that used to connect to the finance app should still connect to that finance app. In which case, you then go through and you update those policies again, and you now have everything working the way it should. So I feel super fortunate to have found both technology as well as cybersecurity in my career. And I took a little bit of a maybe a non-standard path to get here. Is my background, I went to university for neuroscience, completely out of the technology realm. But I had a really lucky opportunity early on to work in a technical support help desk, where I was helping customers fix issues like break fix software issues, which really gave me the opportunity to learn how software works just in general, both from the standpoint of the different types of specializations of software services, front end, back end, database, all this different stuff, but also how to optimize database queries, how to optimize connections, all this different stuff. The thing here that I really feel really fortunate about are the mentors that I found. And so as you're going through your journey in your career, the thing that's always served me well is being willing to do whatever. If someone asks for help with database optimizations or something like that, it might not seem like the most glamorous thing, but it really helps solidify my understanding of technology. And through that, I got more opportunities. From there, I got the opportunity to become a sales engineer. Sales engineering is really about helping customers make the right decisions about their needs when it comes to technology. There's lots of different vendors out there that do very similar things. And, it's all about trying to help them choose the right one. Obviously, the hope is always that they choose yours, but at the end of the day, there's always something that the customer will need in the future as well. And so helping them through that decision-making process will always serve people well, regardless of the decision. And it's all about getting the technical win. So when I say that, I mean going in, listening to the customer, knowing the systems and the software well enough that you can be creative with it, so that when the customer says, "Can you do this?" right, the answer ideally is always yes, right? Because you know the product and the software so well that you can be creative to create that outcome, regardless if it was specifically designed for that or not. And through that, I got the opportunity to move into technical marketing. Technical marketing is really about helping sellers. It's about enabling them with training and helping them build demos and making sure that they know how to properly position the products. This was a really fun role from the standpoint that you get to work with people day in, day out who at scale, right? Who are feeling this excitement to go off and position these new software solutions. And you get to be at the center of that and really be an aggregation point for all that information coming in, help iterate on the training, help iterate on how you talk about the product, all that different stuff. But really where I ultimately wanted to be is, it was always my goal to be in product management as soon as I was in sales engineering. And that was because I really want to help customers solve business issues through technology, right? So like we were talking about before, when it comes to cybersecurity, there are legitimate business risks when it comes to not properly securing the environment. We hear about in the news, again, how different hospitals get breached. And, there's one here where I live in San Diego where they were down for a week and they had to reformat and all their computers to make sure that the person was out of the environment. I wanted to help customers to not have to go through that, to be able to invest that effort and those resources into helping their customers instead. In that case, helping patients. And so I love solving problems. And if that's you as well, product management might be a really good fit for you as well. Now, you might be thinking about, well, Zach, what you said interests me. I'm interested in cybersecurity. I think protecting enterprises and people and data and customers is a really exciting thing. What should I do next? Well, the place I would direct you to, there's actually two places. They're both Cisco backed and Cisco resources, but one is the Network Academy, right? Where you're probably seeing this. There's a ton of other resources on there about different topics that really help you determine where you might want to specialize. Again, I mentioned there's a ton of different specializations, either in the shield right or the shift left spaces across all those different types of technologies. Find your niche, find where you are interested the most, and really dive in there on the Cisco Networking Academy. And then the next one is we actually have hands-on demos. And these demos are meant for anybody who wants to learn more about Cisco products. It's called dCloud. And in dCloud, you're able to go in there and if you wanted to look at secure workload, that product we talked about earlier, if you want to look at virtual firewalls, if you want to look at any of these different products, you can go into our library of resources and actually do a walkthrough demo. So it's a real demo. Like you're doing the clicking. You can get off track if you want to poke around, but it's also very accessible from the standpoint that there's a step-by-step instructions as to what to do, when, and why, and it follows a storyline. And so I find this a really great resource when even I'm trying to learn about a new product that's coming to market, or how I might be able to partner with another team in order to make a stronger product by integrating things. So check out dCloud, check out other Cisco Network Academy resources to find out more.
Thank you so much, Zach. That was very insightful, breaking down complex security ideas into actionable concepts like left of boom and sharing your inspiring career journey. We have time for a short Q&A and have collected 3 top-of-mind questions that we'd love to ask you. Zach, your career journey from sales engineer to technical marketing, product management, and now a director is a fantastic example for our audience. For those looking to discover their own path into cybersecurity at a company like Cisco, what foundational technical and perhaps even professional skills do you believe were most critical at each stage? And how would you advise someone to start building them?
Yeah. So I get asked this question quite a bit, actually. And the fact of the matter is that there is no magic or easy button to any of this. I mean, if you think about a different industry and a different thing that you might interact with on a day-to-day basis, I mean, imagine if you were looking for a personal trainer. There are certain characteristics, skills, knowledge that you would want of that person that you are going to hire to help you out with the job. Similarly, whether you're going into tech or cybersecurity, there are certain things that employers and hiring managers are looking for as well in order to get confidence that you'll be successful in that role. And some of those things that they'll be looking for as to whether or not you're solution-minded, and whether or not maybe you have tried to learn some basic coding and whether or not you can show it. Can you explain maybe how networks work? And are you familiar with how systems use and share data? I mean, none of these are requirements, but they're things that start to create that credibility as you're talking with that hiring manager. I remember my very first interview when I was going to a technical support role right out of university. Is the question I got was, imagine you have an unknown object, like an object you don't know or understand how it works, and it's got 3 components, and the machine is broken. Like, how do you determine what the broken component is? And the answer was, well, you take out one at a time and you replace it and you see if it works, and vice versa until you ultimately get it to back into a functioning perspective. And that question was the one that at least appears showed that hiring manager that I had some sort of troubleshooting skills and capabilities, and ultimately I think got me that job. So you need to build those skills. You need to be able to show those skills, and it doesn't have to be like, I built this huge application, or I've been in cybersecurity for 10 years, or whatever it might be. You have to be able to show those underlying skills. The knowledge can be picked up on the job.
You talked about staying left of boom, preventing an attack before it happens. What's one practical mind shift or key skill that someone just starting out in cybersecurity, or even just navigating the digital world, can focus on today to help them think and act left of boom?
Yeah. So, the biggest and most consistently available attack surface is a company's software because it's on all the time. It's accessible typically for anywhere in the world, at least for publicly available applications. But actually, the biggest risk is the people within the company. I think Cisco just reported that 90% of cybersecurity incidents come from phishing attacks, right? Meaning someone sending you an email, looks urgent, all this different stuff, and gets the person to click a link or do something. And it's easy to make mistakes by clicking that risky link and, maybe not managing your passwords correctly or accidentally approving two-factor authentication pop-up that you didn't actually request. The biggest thing is maintaining a healthy bit of skepticism, just like it's someone that comes to your front door at your house, right? Someone comes to your front door, maybe you don't even answer the door. Maybe you're checking to see, how many people there are and all this different stuff. You need to have that same level of skepticism in your professional and online life as well. So things like using a password store on your laptop, and making sure that if there's an email that makes you feel stressed out or with a sense of urgency, you look at the URL. I even, actually, personal stories, I got a letter in my mailbox that looked like it came from a bank, from Chase, I think it was. And the address was mine, the home address was mine, but it was to a company that I didn't know the name of. And the mail said that, if you got this letter in error, please call us at this phone number. Well, when I Googled the phone number, lots of people had reported it as a scam. So make sure you're always calling official numbers and not just looking even at the ones that Google shows automatically at the top of the screen, because sometimes attackers are actually buying that ad spot at the top of the screen with their phone numbers as well to get people to click on it, call them instead of the company you're looking for. So healthy bit of skepticism is super important in this day and age.
Cybersecurity is constantly evolving, especially with the rapid advancements of AI impacting both threats and defenses. How do you approach continuous learning to stay ahead in this field? And what advice do you have for students or professionals on effectively keeping their skills sharp and understanding the role of AI in our current landscape?
So that is going to be one of the biggest challenges over the next 10 years. And I think knowing the tools and tactics that attackers have access to is the best way to try to figure out ways to defend against it. So you can have fun with this too. Imagine taking a picture from a family member's social media account or something like that and creating some sort of AI generated video from that of them saying something funny or wishing someone happy birthday or something like that. You can start to do that today with some of the AI tools out there. And what that does is it helps you illustrate that even if you hear someone say something and it sounds like their voice, even if you think you see someone doing something because it looks so real, we need to start having that level of skepticism. And the industry really needs to find ways to help the public identify AI generated or even modified content. You can also try to make a little app using AI. So tools like Cursor and Claude by Anthropic. These tools right now are the best in class for coding. You can actually give them pretty great descriptions as to what you want to come out the other side, and it will create it. Now, it helps if you have some technical skills because sometimes you have to guide it a little bit, but it's a fun way to try to figure out the limitations of AI. And then you can also take some of these, if you want to get really super deep, you can actually take some of these open source, open weight AI models, trained models, and alter the training of that AI model. And the thing is, because these tools are moving so fast, make sure to do the same tests over and over time. I know that I've done some tests, call it 6 months ago, where the model is completely bonked out and not done a great job of the request that I gave it. And then, fast forward 6 months and it does a fantastic job of it. So it's really important not to just think of these tools as a point in time snapshot, but something that's constantly evolving. Because just because it doesn't work, one time in the past doesn't mean that it won't be able to do it in the future.
And that brings us to the end of our session today. A big thank you to Zack for sharing his knowledge and insights with us on staying left of boom. If you're interested in these topics, cybersecurity, protecting against threats, understanding attack methods, and building a career in this vital field, and want to learn more, check out our courses on netacad.com. We offer introductory courses for those just getting started in networking and cybersecurity. Additionally, we provide Cisco certificate and certification-aligned courses like Ethical Hacker and CyberOps Associate, along with many more courses that cover foundational IT and cybersecurity concepts. For those ready to pursue a specific career path, we also offer training for roles in security operations, including penetration testing or as a junior cybersecurity analyst. You can find free self-paced courses to explore topics at your own speed. And we also partner with thousands of educators across the globe if you're looking for instructor-led training and hands-on labs at an academy near you. Thank you all for joining us today and for your excellent questions. We hope this session helps you find your future in technology. See you next time.
3, 2,